Hello everyone, this is Jasmina, and in this video I'm going to talk about the House 8 mansions. This gentleman, Edgar Lockton Jung, I believe he lives in Australia. He actually has his own YouTube and his own business, and he has a lot of really good YouTube videos that go into extremely detailed discussion about a lot of feng shui. And if you want to really understand the basis, the super detailed basis, his videos are the way to go. I do more of an application, not so much of the very fine details. Now, the traditional form of the House 8 mansions uses the sitting sector to define the group and the chart. So if your house or your, actually back then it was a compound, a courtyard house with a wall around it, you did the whole compound as one. If it was north sitting, east sitting, south sitting, or southeast sitting, then it was an east group and it had its own chart. And if it's west, south, southwest, or northwest, it would be a west group chart. And each one of these directions have a different chart, but they're divided into these two groups. Just like your personal 8 mansions, you're either a west group person or an east group person. And actually it's very, very linked together. But that is what you have. Now, the method that he has been taught uses the main door location as the focus point. So what we doing here, they're basically the 3 methods he talked about. All he's doing is looking at different focus points. The traditional form uses a sitting sector. The one his master taught him uses the main door location. And this, of course, is very appropriate for an apartment or a condo. But it's the main door sector that will determine which of the charts you use. And then there's one that uses the facing direction of the building. So the facing sector determines the group. So there's also something called the natal 8 mansions. And this is a chart that never changes, and it's the same for every single house. And it's the same as the north sitting house that you will find through any one of these methods. That is any one of the focus points. It will be the north focus sector. And this is often applied without concern of actual sitting direction or door location or anything. It's just applied, and since it's the same for all houses, it's really probably not terribly applicable, but there are times when this might be all you have to work with. The only difference between these 3 is what is the focus sector. For the traditional form, it's the sitting. The one his master taught him, which I think is the one most commonly used today, is the main door location. But there's also the possibility of using the facing sector. And that one, whatever your focus sector is, that one always gets the stability sector, the Fu Wei. I prefer growth because, at least in today's life, if you do not learn, you actually slide backwards. So you have to grow to be stable. So this is why today it's better called a growth sector. The way this all works is by looking at the Lo Shu. Now, we've seen the Lo Shu with numbers many times, but here I've added not just the names of the sectors, I also have the guas. Now, these are the names of the guas. And so if a house, in traditional terms, if a house sits west, it'll be a Dui house. And I have a gua number 7. So the guas are the trigrams. And the way we figure out which sector gets which property in the 8 mansions is based on the changing Yao, and a Yao is a line. So we look at this one and we look at this one, which lines change, and that will tell you what you, which of the 8 mansions properties gets each one of these boxes. That's why you have to have a focus sector so that you can compare from this to this, this to this, Or if this is your focus sector, then you're comparing this to this, this to this, and so forth. So this is the whole key in the 8 mansions. You must know what your focus sector is. Now, if you want to know great details about this, his YouTube channel, Edgar's YouTube channel, has, I think, 6 or 7 videos that all talk just about 8 mansions. And the easiest way to find this is to go to his YouTube page and go to his playlist and click on the Feng Shui for Beginners, and then he's got them listed by number, and you just find number 26. So to be able to understand how these changes occur and how we know exactly what does what, I'm going to start with the focus sector being the Li Gua in the south. But the key here is you must know how these Yao are listed. The bottom Yao, the bottom line, is A, the middle one is B, the top one is C. Then there's this poem that tells you what you need to do. And I'll go through this step by step so you'll see how this works. So if we have, this is the standard chart, and we keep this for a reference. And now we want to fill in this chart with the 8 mansions. So if we're looking from here to here, well, obviously it's the same one. So this is no changes. So that is how you always end up with your focus sector being growth. Very simple. Now I'm going to look at this, and I'm actually just going to go across in rows, but looking here, so we're comparing these two. Well, what changes? Well, the bottom line changes, that's A changes, so does the middle, so B changes, so A and B changes, so that creates health, and that's how you fill it in. Here we have A and C, the top and the bottom change. So that creates the 6 killings. We look at this, bottom stays, middle stays, only top, only C changes. So that's how we get success. Here, what changes? The middle and the top. So that's B and C. So that's how you get the 5 ghosts. Here, we have just the bottom change. So only A changes. So that's how you get O high. Here, everything flips. So that's how you get longevity. And then finally, only B changes. So that's how you get the Quming. Now, I hate this name, life ending, because doesn't mean death. It's like the death door in the Qi charts. It means the end of something. This actually is just like that. Things maybe don't go so smoothly. Something big will change. Now, if you're trying to break a bad habit, this isn't a bad place to be. But in general, you don't want to use this all the time because it becomes very disruptive. Now, I did want to show you this. Now, this is a Li house. It's Gua number 9. If you're a Kwa number 9, you will see that all this lines up. Success is in the east. Longevity, which is love and relationships, it's the same type of deal, is in the north. Health is in the southeast. Growth is in the south. And then you have all these two. You can just look at that. So there is consistency here. And this is actually how your personal Kwa, how your personal 8 mansions directions are determined. Not sectors, but directions. Now the south, so here I'm going to start giving you the charts that you can take a screenshot of. Now this is the focus sector south. So this could be the sitting, it could even be the facing, or it could be the main door location. And the sitting and the main door are the more common ones. But today, really, it's the main door. Unless you live in a courtyard house, which I'll talk about in a bit. So this is for a southwest focus point, and that could be your sitting or your main door. This is for your west. This is for the northwest. This is for the north. This is for the northeast. This is for the east. And finally, this is for the southwest. And you can see growth is always where the focus sector is. Now, when 8 Mansions was created, only the very rich in China could afford it. And the rich all lived in houses like this. These were really courtyard houses. And you did not put the 8 mansions over the house. You put it over the entire courtyard. So the basic feature is the main house here is where the family lives. These smaller buildings are places where the servants and guards live, and also where the kitchen and the laundry and everything is. And these always had double walls in the front, and this is used for various things, but nothing permanently is usually here. It's maybe repairing something, or stuff is brought in and put here for a short time, and then after this door is shut, then they bring it into the rest of the real part of the house. And so this is sort of a security type system. Now, this one always used the sitting. And in this case, I'm going to show you some other maps, but this happens to be west sitting, east facing. And of course, since this is traditional, it's going to have the focus be the sitting sector. But today, whether this is if this is a house, but especially in an apartment, you can see, yes, your main door really has to be your focus sector. And because this is how you get in and out. And most of the time, you don't really have anything like this. You may not even have walls around you. So you don't have the same type of a system. So this is why I think they've changed. But I think there's another reason too, and I'll discuss that near the end. But this is how you would lay out the 8 mansions over the traditional system where you have a courtyard house. So again, it's not over just the house. It's over the entire courtyard. Since this is a west sitting house, or west sitting courtyard, it's a Dewey house. It uses GWA 7. So when you apply that, this is what you get. Now, these are all good. And the thing is, if you do this, because this is where the family lived, so if you do this with the sitting, you're guaranteed to have at least growth here. Now, here we have 3 good things, but at least here, you're absolutely guaranteed to have growth in the house where your family is living. Now, I put the doors here because this is a good sector for the doors, because these aren't really great, and this is why these things are only temporarily used. These are not great, but it's only your servants and your necessary other things like kitchens and so forth. So it's lesser importance, and you're always going to have some that aren't fantastic, but it's not too bad either. I mean, it's certainly not one of these guys. In a house, because we use the door as the focus point. Now, this is a quad 3 house. It's an east facing and sun house. So this is totally different than this. Not one is the same. But again, we guarantee our main door gets a good sector, the growth. So in general, if you use this system, using the main door location works very well for all the special formations that make all stars become timely for all periods, and these are the 4 that do. And this works particularly well with the 7-star robbery formation because you have to have your main door where your double stars are, and that will either be in the facing or the sitting sector of the house. And you can still have a facing sector here and your main door here, and that still is okay. It's not as common, but it can happen. So this works well, at least if you care about the 8 mansions. Now, there is an issue with the on mountain, on water, and up mountain, down water formations. and generally, care needs to be taken. And that's because in these two, the facing and sitting sectors they have special power. But if you have the Chuming, the life ending, that's not really a sector you want to be in a lot. It has its uses, but it's not a good thing to be there a long, long time. Now, houses that have the facing direction of either east or west are going to have this problem because the west one will have the life ending here and the growth here, which we saw was 7, the call number 7. So in those cases, if you have that and your only possible good or special formation is either on mountain on water or up mountain down water, then you do not want your main door to be in the facing sector or in the sitting sector. You want it someplace else. So you've got to see which one works best. So here I've just moved it down to the southeast, and this is what we get. This is actually quite good, but the 6 killings, it's useful. It's certainly a lot more useful than the Chuming, but it's not fantastic. If we move it to the northeast, you actually just flip these two, which is pretty common. And again, it's this one's useful, this one's not nearly as useful. It could be used, but you don't tend to get a lot done when you're here. So that is why it's not terribly useful, although it's good for your emotional health and your spirituality. So it's good, it makes you feel fulfilled, but you don't tend to get a lot done. Now, another way, and this one is actually about the best you can do, is you can have the main door instead be in the north sector. Then you get health here and mishaps here. Now, I would, if it's for me, I would put the kitchen here and I would put your home office here. You're going to have problems, but there'll be problems you can solve, and then you'll get better at your job. So this is actually pretty nice. Now, this assumes that you don't have anything else going on. In this case, you would have to have the up mountain down water formation to do this. I think it is actually the door in the southwest that will give you the opposite of this. So if you have the on mountain on water, you would have to have your door here in the southwest, which would be even weirder, but it could happen. And there are ways to do it. I mean, it wouldn't feel very natural, but it can happen. Unfortunately, there will never be a case where both the facing and the sitting sectors are one of the 4 positive ones if your house faces either east, west, southeast, or northwest. But there is this condition can occur, and this one's pretty good. The second best would be with the 6 killings. That would be the second best possible one, but this is much better. Now, if you happen to have both a combo 10 and one of these, and in this case, we'd really be talking about the up mountain down water, you could have a condition like this where you had a little bit. I mean, you can't have any missing sectors in combo 10. So the old, what I showed you before, wouldn't work. But you could do this because this is less than a third, or you could even have it bump out a little bit. As long as it's less than 1/3 of this sector, you're okay. And that means that you actually would get a bit of a boost in these 2 locations. But you will still have a good overall house, but it'll either be focused more towards money or focused more towards health and relationships. It depends on which type of combo 10 you have. Now, the method, of course, of using the main door clearly is best applied for apartments or condos because, that is, and they, for some reason, do not use a balcony. Theoretically, you could use the balcony. But this is not what's taught. But then if you do the balcony, then yeah, you guaranteeing that you get good energy coming in from your balcony, which sounds great, but there I have some issues, and I will talk about them in a bit. But you can also use the facing direction as the focus sector, which will be the yellow indicated in all of my charts, that yellow box. Now, there are advantages to using the mansions. First off, period is irrelevant. If you don't know the period of your house, this is something you could use. There are disadvantages too, and there are no cures for this. You just have to use these locations appropriately. Now, flying stars, the purple, white, and the Chi-Man charts must also be considered. And so, really, that is not something you should truly ignore. Especially the flying stars for a house and the purple, white, and Chi-Man charts for an apartment or a condo. Now, there are some conditions where it's possible to have a house 8 mansions without having some of these other 3 charts. But if you're missing all 3 charts, you also will not have a house 8 mansions. You can still have the natal house 8 mansions that's applied to everything, but you won't have an individual house 8 mansions that is for your particular house. You can still use the annual and monthly stars, and of course then what I just talked about, the natal house 8 mansions, and best used in the radial version of your compass because your house is so strangely positioned. So here's an example. Let's say for some reason, now this says 22.5 degrees, your house faces right between northwest 3 and north 1. So you do not have a definitive facing direction. Your door is centered right there, so you do not have a definitive door sector or subsector. So you don't have a flying star chart, you don't have a purple white chart or a Chi-Man chart or a house 8 mansions. But you still have this. Now this is specifically for July of 2023, but your natal house 8 mansions is listed here. Of course, these are the general 45-degree sectors, and then you have the year is bigger and the month is smaller in these 2 numbers. So you can see here north is a really good sector, and this is kind of true for everybody. North is quite good. Health is probably kind of average. You've got the 2, which is negative, but it's also the health, so that kind of balances out. This is okay. This is also okay. And even though this is life ending, it's got very good stars. So this can be quite good for breaking bad habits. So this is kind of how you would look at it. Now, this is really good for home office. 6 gives you some discipline, so you can work hard, and you will solve the problems that will come up from the mishaps. The rest of the sectors are so-so. This isn't too bad. This actually is useful, especially if you want to use it for meditation and or pursuing a hobby that helps you feel happy. The only downside here is this particular month we have 2 here, but in June this is also a 3, which is, 3 isn't fantastic, but it's okay. Next month this will be a 1, which will be a little better. So you just have to kind of look at that. So no matter what, you have something. I wouldn't stay in this house really long term because you have so little to work with, and you're at the whim of time. And sometimes it'll be good in one location. You have to keep moving around to get the best. I would not want to be in this house simply because I'm lazy and I don't want to keep moving around. Now, in general, I really have some big issues with the house 8 mansions, how it was created. So traditionally, it's the sitting sector. And if you think about back then, China was quite wealth-wise, there was quite a big gap. Either you were poor or you were very well off. There was a very small middle class. So if you were wealthy enough to afford feng shui, you lived in a courtyard house. And if you define the House 8 mansions with the sitting sector being growth, that house is guaranteed to have at least one good feng shui sector in their main house. And honestly, that's just way too convenient. I mean, you know the old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. I think that applies. If you think about the flying stars, purple white, all these other things, you may or may not, if you were to apply it over the whole area like they did here, you may or may not have good entities at your main house. And to me, that's more objective because it depends on your period and your facing direction, and you know, it is what it is. Let's put it that way. Now, since we don't live in courtyard houses, most practitioners and even masters have now changed to using the main door. Again, if you use the main door as the focus sector, you're guaranteed to have a growth sector there at your main door, which of course is a very important sector, and you want to have good properties there. Again, it's just too convenient. I mean, I look at that and I just say, I'm really skeptical, really, really skeptical. It just sounds too good to be true. You are guaranteeing people to have something good. And that my scam meter goes off when I see something like this. I just really don't. I mean, maybe there's a better way to apply this that's more more uniform, and maybe the natal one is better than this, than deciding what your focus sector will be. I mean, I really have a problem with this. Now, I'm totally okay with your personal 8 mansions being used as directions, because this is based on your Chinese solar year of birth. You don't make any decision in that. When your mother's body is ready, you get born. And to me, that's more objective. It's more like the flying stars. It is what it is because of when you were created, and in this case, when the house was created. So, or if you change the period, it's when the house's new period was created. So it's based on something that doesn't necessarily give you a good result. You know, it's more objective, whereas these are so subjective. I just really question it, and I put very, very little emphasis on the House 8 mansions. I mean, if it happens to be good, I'm happy. If it's not, I'm not worried about it, because I honestly don't believe that doing it this way is legitimate. I think it's just too conveniently good. So after that diatribe, that's basically it. If you have any questions, you can ask them to me here or leave a comment. And also, I do have a website, ad-free, if you want to get more directions on how to determine the facing direction in your house. That's basically what's there, and a little bit of other information. And if you subscribe, you'll get some new videos occasionally and some on a monthly basis. Thank you again for watching.